Today we will discuss about large language models, the initial overview of large language models, then followed by the four waves of large language models, and then we will also discuss on different capabilities of large language models that distinguish from basic large language models versus emergent large language models versus augmented large language models. Then we will also discuss the landscape of large language models in terms of timelines, open source large language models versus closed source large language models. Let us discuss the overview of large language models. A large language model contains a layers of transformer architecture. It has billions of parameters. It uses a vast amount of data to train the billions of parameters. So it takes a publicly available data set such as books, websites, and it performs a free filtering approach on these publicly available data sets, and the free filtered data will be passed to these large language models to train these billions of parameters. Once this training process is completed, it can be used for the various tasks. So the initial large language models have been used for the conversational AI and chatbots, and also it is used for summarization and search engines. It is extended to the code generation process where the large publicly available code is trained on the large language models. Let us discuss the four waves of language models. The initial or traditional language models is called the statistical language models. In statistical language models, the language representation is depending on the statistics of words in a document. For example, they can use word counts to represent a language. This also can be used as a n-gram models using Markov chain process. But these models struggle with the data sparsity problem, and also these models struggle in capturing the meaning of two different words. The next wave of language models are called the neural language models. In neural language models, they are able to calculate the word meanings using the contextual vector representation called word embeddings. They are used the shallow models to represent the word meaning using methods like word to vector. These models are pretty good in identifying the meanings of words, but these models struggle in representing the same word in different meaning at different contexts. But these models can be used as a seed representation for the next wave of models called pre-trained language models. In pre-trained language models, the initial layer will be a pre-trained word embeddings are used. Those pre-trained word embeddings are attached to a recurrent neural network or convolutional neural network to train a language model for general tasks. That is why we say these models are called task agnostic based models. And large language models are very capable to understand the meanings of the entire sentences. And also, it is very capable to generate the sequence of words for a given specific query. Let us discuss the emerging capabilities of large language models. The large language models are categorized into three categories. One is basic large language models, second is emerging large language models, that is augmented large language models. In basic large language models, you can train your large language models on a specific data set. The large language model capable enough to answer any questions given to that data set. For example, if you could train the large language models on the Wikipedia articles, then that large language model would be able to answer on Wikipedia question answering system. If you could train your large language model on the code data, which is the code coming from the publicly available Git repository, then that large language model is capable to answer your code related queries, and it could able to fetch the code for your query. Similarly, if you can train your language model on the multilingual data, it can able to perform the translation process. It can also perform the cross-lingual question answering systems like that. And similarly, if you can train your model on the comprehension data, such as summaries of a document or summaries of your reading text or summaries of your video calling, then the large language models would be able to summarize the data that you pass to that models. The second type of model is emerging large language models. These emerging large language models are basically uses the different types of data set. For example, reasoning data set, symbolic reasoning, and logical reasoning, arithmetic reasoning data sets to train large language models so that you will be able to teach all reasoning related questions. And the instruction following, for example, you can see that task definitions, the task completions, and also positive negative examples as instructions to the large language models. And there are some other kind of context learning based models you can use, which means that you can provide, along with the queries, you can also provide some examples of the answers that will help the model to learn what type of answers you would be expecting for your queries, and based on that it would be able to give you the answers. In the augmented large language models, the models are evaluated using the self critic or self refinement process that will be feedback into the models to improve the model performance. So in the second type of augmented large language models are interacting with the users, which means that the feedback will be taken from the users based on the model output. That feedback will be used to improve the model performance. The third type of augmented models are tool utilization. In this process, it could perform either API calling or search capabilities, or it could also perform some tool planning process and the task decomposition process. During these processes, it could take the feedback from the output. That output would be used to improve the model performance on tools utilization process. Let us discuss the landscape of LLMs in terms of the timelines, and also let us discuss the open source language models versus the closed source language models. From 2017 to 2018, there are three types of models developed. One is transformer, bot based models, and GPT-1 models. These three models are open source models. In 2019, you have the T5 model, which is called encoder decoder model, mainly used for translation purposes or summarization purposes. And you can also see that GPT-2 and bot models. GPT-2 model is a decoder based model, whereas bot is a encoder decoder based model, and all three models are open source models. In 2020, you can see that GPT-3 models, which is a closed source model, which is also a decoder based model. In 2021, you can see that the Codex and Gopher are used as a closed source model, whereas Flan as a open source model. In 2022, you can see that Palm and Instruct GPT are the closed source model, and the Bloom and the Chinchilla are two other models. One is open source model, another is the closed source model. In 2023, you can see that the two models are coming on the Llama, which are open source model, and there is a GPT-4 model on a closed source models.